Several members of Congress from across the country are here in Louisiana getting an up-close look at the offshore oil industry and what it means to America and Louisiana's economy. They're guests of Congressman Steve Scalise, who has organized this tour for more than a decade now. Congressman Scalise is joining us along with one of the members of Congress that's on his tour, Congressman Denver Riggleman, a newly elected Republican from the state of Virginia. And one of the reasons you wanted to come down on this is because you're trying to get oil, at least see if there is oil off the coast of Virginia.
We do. This is something that's coming up on the East Coast, and for the whip to invite me gave me that sort of that learning experience. But Louisiana's cracked some nuts we haven't in Virginia. I mean, the engineering expertise, their environmental consciousness, everything they've done on these rigs, we got to learn that. So hopefully I can take these lessons learned on revenue sharing, on coastal restoration. I can take those back to Virginians because of the whip that he brought the congregation down, and we could see what's going on out there, and it was fantastic.
And Congressman, the reason you bring people down here is a lot to help the Louisiana oil industry so people understand how important it is, not just to the state, but to the entire country.
Yeah, you know, Eric, deep water drilling is kind of a mystery to a lot of people. You know, they know that there's drilling in the Gulf of Mexico, but they don't really know how those vessels get out there. You know, you're talking the Hess Stampede platform we were in yesterday. It's about a $5 billion asset built. It took about 2 years. And then it's out there literally like a floating city in the Gulf of Mexico, about 90 miles south of the city of New Orleans. And they're producing, yesterday they produced over 40,000 barrels of oil. And so
is production up because prices are up now?
Production is fairly steady. It's not necessarily tied to the price of oil.
I mean, it would if it stayed
long-term investments
oil, yeah.
are made because of the price of oil, but once they're producing, they want to bring in as much oil as you can safely bring in based on what's being produced in the rig, the wells that are tied beneath the rig.
And what do you think you learned on a trip like this, you and the other congresspeople?
Well, what we learned, first of all, just the engineering that goes into it, also the investment, and the fact, and then how those monies are used not only for private business, but how to help the communities. I didn't know all this. I didn't know about the coastal restoration or the revenue sharing or the royalties. So I just found it amazing that all this was actually intertwined in sort of one concept and one project. And now I can take this expertise back in Virginia and say, listen, it's environmentally sound, engineering-wise it's fantastic, but also there's revenue sharing where we could help our sort of less fortunate communities in Virginia.
Now, if I could switch gears, tomorrow is Attorney General Barr is going to release to Congress a redacted version of the 400-page Mueller report. Would you like to see Congress see the entire report?
Yeah, what I've asked for, and I think a lot of my colleagues, is to see as much of the report as legally allowed.
Because even President Trump said he wanted everybody to see it.
The law dictates what can be out. I think what most people are interested in are the big takeaways, the top lines. Was there collusion with Russia? Was there any obstruction? From everything we've seen, there was no collusion with Russia, and there was no obstruction by the president.
He said he couldn't exonerate him from obstruction.
Well, but I mean, in any crime, if you're charged with something, and by the way, Chairman Schiff was out there for 2 years saying he had more than circumstantial evidence that there was collusion. And if it turns out there was none, is he going to apologize for misleading the American people for 2 years? Show us what you have, is what we've said. If there was collusion, show it. But if there was no collusion, it's time for people to stop trying to harass the president and his family just because they disagree with the election of 2016. We'll have a presidential election next year. Let's focus on getting the economy moving again, lowering health care costs for families. Those are the kind of things we want to focus on. It seems like Speaker Pelosi's fixated on just attacking the president, even if there's no findings of collusion or obstruction.
And this is something you have a bit of expertise in.
Yes, sir. And I was looking at that first 4-page report. They're talking about pen registries, which are it's really telephony metadata.
And tell them why you know a bit about that.
Well, so I was Air Force Intelligence, so we actually did some telephony tracking. So if you look at the metadata and what those individuals, who they're calling, there's private information about their phones, whether it's their IMSIs, TIMSIs, and we can look that up, at some point as far as the acronyms. But this is private information. if somebody hasn't been charged with something, you can glean a lot off of those pen registries.
Well, and people expect that kind of thing to be redacted, and inflammatory things about private citizens. But Attorney General Barr said that anything inflammatory about politicians would be left in.
And ultimately, the law dictates. There are laws already on the books that say what in a report like this can be shown to the public and what can't be. What we've said is, I want the Mueller report to be shown to the public in full compliance with the law. The big issues that I'm looking at are, it was all about, this whole investigation was about whether or not there was collusion with Russia. We know Russia tried to interfere with our elections. By the way, it happened under Barack Obama's watch. He let that happen. But ultimately, was there any collusion with the Trump or Clinton campaign? That's what this investigation was about.
Well,
if it shows there was no collusion, it's time for the people that have been saying for 2 years that there was collusion to admit that they were wrong and finally move on. Is that going to happen? That's what I'm going to be looking for tomorrow.
Well, hopefully we find out a lot more tomorrow when it's released. All right,
Exactly.
thank you, gentlemen. We
Thanks,
appreciate
sir.
that.
Thanks, Art.